Esther Katz. Esther Katz started speaking, I think, the day after the skinheads announced that they were going to march in Skokie. Does anybody remember that? I don't even know which year that was. But it was a very sad time for the Jewish people altogether, especially for the survivors, because they were saying what others still say today, especially the leader of Iran, that the Holocaust didn't happen, and they were going to march in Skokie. Skokie, Illinois, is right by Chicago, just a suburb to the north, and the largest amount of survivors live in Skokie, in Illinois. And so they were going to march there, and their statement was, it didn't happen. Well, I don't even know. How many did they say? Lori and I were just up there. This is my friend Lori Boroff, who came out with me tonight. Yeah. About a dozen. A lot of survivors that showed up. They really got upset because up until then, they had really been trying to put the past behind them and live towards the future. Some things that survivors have told me, when it is your holidays, when they have Passover and Hanukkah, their driveway's not full of cars like at our Christmas celebrations, at our Thanksgiving. Jewish survivors' kids tell me, they couldn't understand why there was nobody at their house, and their moms and dads didn't talk about it. As a matter of fact, some of my friends that I've had kids interview, their kids have learned more since I started this project than they ever knew, because their moms and dads didn't want to talk about it. It was bad memories. It was the hardest part of their life. But Esther Katz, she had a lot of chutzpah. And they loved her. She was a very special woman, and she is greatly missed. So next slide. Here's Esther Averick and Esther Katz together. All the times I took these ladies places and out to eat and out to speak, I never had all three of them together. Somebody was always out of town. And this was right before the Holocaust Remembrance, that first night that I heard a survivor story when I took my daughter. That's called the Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance. They have it every year. And this was a little dinner that they had beforehand. And these kids were college students that they always have an escort, because it's a very emotional night. They light candles in remembrance for the 6 million who died. So these are the two ladies with their escorts. Next slide. This is Ida Kramer. Has anybody ever heard of or met Ida Kramer by any chance? Usually, if I have a group, they have. For a long time, she's the Quad Cities Holocaust expert, director of the Jewish Federation for many, 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 many years. And she's just very thankful that I'm getting these stories recorded for. Slide. Esther Schiff is the last of my three friends, the Quad Cities three Esthers. She saw the books that had been done about the other two gals, and she wanted one, so I made an appointment for her to go speak to a middle school class near her house, but she started to have bad dreams again. She'd never spoken, she still hasn't to this day, because she called me and canceled. And so I went to see her, and she said that she might be able to talk to one student. So my son ended up writing her story, and our German exchange student did the illustrations, which was very powerful for her to be part of a project that says never again. But Esther's story is she was in a small town in Poland, went to the small town ghetto, similar to Esther Averick. She was older. She was a teenager. And she would go out and she would just get to walk past the guards because she was a pretty young teenage girl. So she would walk past the guards, and she would get to go out and bring food back for her family as well. And one day while she was out, they had taken her family away. So she went and got in line with a bunch of Polish kids, and she didn't know what to do. But she knew that she couldn't be advertising that she was Jewish. She knew that much. So she changed her name to a name that she told me was a very common Polish name, Edwarda Optawaska. Now, that doesn't sound too common to me, but I guess it was for them back there. So she changed her name. She got in line, told them that she'd lost her paperwork, her credentials. And so they sent her to Germany, which was not where she was hoping to go at all. So she lived with German farmers, different ones, for the years through the war. She was slave labor. So she worked from early in the morning till late at night, but she had enough to eat because she lived on a farm. But if you go to the next slide, she would tell me about all the things that were in the newspaper and on the radio. Most of the people didn't get a chance to listen to the radio, but because she was better off, she had the radio there. But really, was she? I mean, all they had to say was horrible things about how the Jews were the cause of it all. So, and she said in the newspaper, you see that lower right-hand side, they always depicted the Jewish people with those huge noses that looked more like rats, So the talk around the farmers when they were drinking their coffee was always very anti-Semitic. So very, very frightening for a young Jewish girl, for sure. So next slide. Here's Esther Averick and Esther Schiff. There was an Anne Frank exhibit at the museum, the Putnam. And instead of having a ribbon cutting, they did a barbed wire cutting. And so there they are with Charlie Brooks, I think, mayor, maybe. So that was a special night for them. Next slide. And here's my son, little toothy guy, with Esther. And the front of his children's book says, Eduarda Optawaska saved my life, the real life story of Jewish Holocaust survivor Esther Schiff. And our illustrator, as I mentioned, was a German, and you can see how she put, she basically had a mask that she put on, and she became somebody else for the duration of the war. And then when the war was over, she had no family. None of my friends named Esther had any surviving family members, so they were all three alone after the war. So next slide. Well, after I finished getting I didn't do the work, let me make that clear. The kids did the work. They did the books. But I did the work in matching the kids up with the women. So I was the encourager, basically, the cheerleader, the coach, whatever, in getting the kids to accomplish this. The Jewish Federation asked me to get some prison camp liberators to talk. Actually, they have some videotapes, but they feel like putting these books in the schools is a more powerful way. More kids will get the exposure than they would watching the videos even, just read aloud. So I found out that there was a liberator right there in Aledo where I live, and his name is Jesse, and he had never talked about it. He had never talked about his experiences with anyone other than his wife. So it was very painful for him. And when I sat down to tell him what I was doing and ask him how his experience, tell me about his experiences during the war, he used a lot of really colorful language that afternoon. And after he finished, he said, I can't go in the schools and talk about this, can I? And I said, absolutely not, no, because the teachers would be very upset with me. But he met our son Josh, and Josh and him spent some time together. And down in that picture, I don't know if you can see it very well, he went through from the war. Were so incredible. Actually, they blew some of them up for the new museum up in Chicago. I don't know where they were. I didn't see them that day we were there, but they told me they were going to. They were some of the most incredible photos, not very pleasant to look at, but incredible, incredible photos. And he was told by his platoon leader to destroy them before he left. And he said, I just had this thought. What if somebody tries to say this didn't happen? So he stuck them in his old boots and brought him home, and his wife put him in a photo album. So he has those, and I've scanned them all and have them. And so here our son Josh did the writing again, but not too confident on his illustration. So our German girl was busy that year. She illustrated this book as well, and it just shows how he was there. The camps where they had been mistreated and bring them out into the new displaced persons camp that they had set up. It was a very, very traumatic time for these people, and these young soldiers were not very well equipped to do this, as you can well imagine. So tough stories out there. So this woman came to speak 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember. Her name is Eva Schloss. I really wasn't familiar with her story when I heard she was coming, but I did go because now I'm on the board, the Holocaust Board of Education. And so they told me I was really going to enjoy Eva, and I found out later that she was a friend of Anne Frank's before the war. Her German father was the same as Anne and her family were Germans as well. And these two dads had the same idea, let's go to Holland where possibly the Nazis will not come. Well, the Nazis did go to Holland,